Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Revere End Podcast. It has been a couple of weeks before we have last seen you, especially if you're a watcher on YouTube. But it is myself, Alfie, and joined again by Billy. Billy, how you doing, mate? It's been a little while.
It's been a little while. Well, not since we've spoke to each other, but
Oh no.
since we spoke to each other over a podcast. Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Norwich keep on winning, and as long as that continues, I'll continue to be in a good mood, I suppose.
Well, I say we've missed a lot, but a lot of wins. So there's so much to talk about. But I guess like in kind of similar fashion, we will be covering more so the kind of latest game, Blackburn, with a little bit of a mention to I guess the previous week. So that's Nottingham Forest included as well. We're going to try and provide a little bit more structure across the podcast. So hopefully you notice it to a degree. And we're going to start that by actually going into some kind of tactic talk from the upcoming game or the games we've just played. Now, Bill, just because you've definitely done quite a lot of research on this as well, in terms of Blackburn, I mean, how did they set up, particularly against us? What was the things that maybe we could have exploited? How did you feel like they set up against us?
I think Chris Gore mentioned it on commentary as well. It's actually quite pleasing and quite nice and refreshing in a way to see a team come at us and play because, whilst obviously you want Norwich to have the best chances of winning, actually, we spend so long these days, don't we, watching Norwich because there's just a game every other day, it feels like. So it does get a little bit repetitive watching the same low block 5-4-1 sort of tactical approach from other teams. So to see sort of Blackburn come out in this like 4-3-3, trying to play the ball out from the back, quite high line as well. But also, they mixed up really nicely. Their main threat, I would say, was the diag to their wingers. So they obviously had Sam Gallagher on the left, almost as like an inside forward, if you like. Really sort of, I suppose, not bullying, but they obviously targeted Max Aarons and Jakob Lungi Sorensen. Max, because he's so small, and also Jakob Lungi Sorensen in the sense that he is just not a left back. And that's a recurring theme, right, that we're seeing. But I was impressed. I really was impressed, and I think it's really sort of surprising to see where they are. I fully expect them to sort of pick up some form if they carry on playing like that. In Harvey Elliott, in particular, for me, he's the best opposition player I've seen this season. I think he was immense, and I say opposition player, it's a little bit of a, not a disgrace, but it's almost a little bit like how Ollie Skip is in this league. I think we know that Ollie Skip and Harvey Elliott, these are two players that could be playing for England in the future, and they're here because they need 46 games, don't they, of continuous football development before they make that next step to, as we speak, to the sort of best sides in England at the moment. So, but with Harvey Elliott, the difference with him is he is a little bit younger. I think he's 17, I think. So
you wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know, I think. They didn't mention that enough. But he obviously has that confidence and that borderline arrogance. Yeah. And I think, this is a Norwich City podcast, so we'll leave the Harvey Elliott chatter there. But you don't always see those types of players. And I think some Norwich fans get a bit arsey about it when you see maybe not a big name, but a talent in this league. And it reminds me a lot, actually, of a few years ago when I was younger. This is going way back now, but I went to an England under-20 game and under-21 game at Carrow Road, and Jack Wilshere was playing. And at that time, Jack Wilshere was the next big thing. And there were similarities that sort of came back to me watching Elliott yesterday. But I suppose how we dealt with that it was tough. We had Pukki back again, obviously, which is a refreshing moment for us to have a centre forward, and he looked like a man possessed yesterday. He was at it consistently. And we'll talk a bit more about Pukki in particular later on, but we were the same old. Really, Vrancic was playing on the whole, and maybe we bided our time a little bit more. We're probably trying to hit him on the counter a little bit more, and the majority of the moments that came in the game and the chances that were presented, we took them. Look, of course, we could have scored more, but you can always score more, can't you? Right? And I think 2-1 was probably a fair result through sort of yellow and green tinted glasses, but make no doubt about it, Blackburn were a tough opponent, and one of the toughest opponents I think we've played, and just how different they were and how refreshing it was to see a team come at us with that attacking threat.
I think what's nice is I know we spoke about this a bit before we kind of started, and it was like looking through the kind of stat sheet. I know you can kind of take that with a pinch of salt because, I think we say this with every time Norwich play. We could lose 1-0 against Derby, but dominate the stat sheet. But this is the first time I've really looked at it and gone, wow, like we really got dominated on paper. And I think it's also a credit in a way to just ourselves. In the way that we were really clinical. I think you don't always. I mean, I know you can look on here and see 17 shots, but you've got so much which are blocked, for example, which they still always count. But and there was also some fortune in the second goal, you can always say as well. But what you've seen across the last couple of weeks, and a stat that I come across, which I think we both kind of in agreement said that we'd seen over the last week, and I saw from watching Quest last night, was that 10 out of our 11 wins from this season have all been by one goal, and the year we went up, it was 17 out of 27. So such a huge percentage of our wins are coming from really just like the odd lucky goal that goes in. Like when you look at Nottingham Forest and even Blackburn, like, it's just a stroke of luck. So I think the good thing is for me is that we're getting through these games thick and thin. I mean, it is really tough to go Saturday, Tuesday, and I think obviously that's had an impact on the squad. But the fact that we can kind of look here now and see that we're matching up against these teams like Blackburn, which as much as they've started poor, I think we can both in agreement say they've got probably definitely one of the strongest squads in the league, for sure. The fact that we can kind of play against a team like this and come out with 3 points away from home. I mean, no matter how you play, you're going to be happy. But the fact that you can kind of have this team come at you and then still be able to get the 3 points, I think is a little bit nicer, because typically when we get put on the back foot, like even against Luton to a degree, when a team really comes out at us sometimes away from home, that is sometimes when we can start to show a little bit of I guess our struggles defensively. But I think we've been fantastic, and I guess long may it roll on. But I don't know if you had kind of anything else you wanted to say about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the caveat maybe to yesterday's game was the fact that Blackburn didn't have any fans. And I was talking to this about my dad earlier. We went for like a socially distanced walk, and we were basically saying like it's quite unfair on these sort of teams that are in the higher tier and can't have fans, because that Luton game, I think we can all agree, was heavily influenced by the effect of the fans. And I don't know if that was because it was the first time that Norwich played in a long while with away fans in the stadium, or home fans in the stadium sort of playing with opposition fans. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and I know Blackburn don't fill the crowd and the grounds in like Luton do, but it just felt like maybe if there was a bit of that extra 5-10%, how would that game have gone? And how would the momentum swayed? And that Norwich hit Blackburn at a good time. We were about to make 3 substitutions. Farker was trying to get a grip of that midfield, and we were losing the game a little bit. And look, is it a bit of luck or is it a bit of Teemu Pukki class? I'll let you decide that. But it was that moment straight away switched, obviously, the result and the scoreline, and ended up giving us the 3 points. And it's those moments in games, isn't it? It's that 5%. And if you have the fans, it's just interesting to think about how it could have turned out. But Norwich are in a fortuitous position. We've got supporters, and we can have supporters in the home games, and every now and then we'll come away and we won't have to face opposition fans. I think it's interesting you mentioned the margin as to which we're winning games and coming away with results. And I think that's probably why I wasn't as disappointed and upset when we lost to Luton and we drew to Coventry, because that is just how games can go. And Norwich are playing on such a fine line at the moment. We're coming out at the back of it now, but we have obviously had such a troubled start to life back in the Championship with everything, not even just talking about the injuries, but just there's a whole host of factors that have played against us. And I think for us to be top, it's remarkable. I mean, some might say we should be top, and I would be inclined to agree with the quality we have. But I think about the circumstances as to which we've found ourselves here. It's so impressive, and I think they all deserve immense credit. Everybody at the club, and look, we're only 18 games in, and we know how difficult this league is, and we're approaching, I say, the busiest time of the year. It's pretty much always been like this throughout the season, but there's certainly a lot of reason to be positive about things at Norwich City at the moment. And this isn't a fluke now. Like you say, 10 of those 11 games that we've won been by the one goal. If it's the odd game here and there, you're a little bit suspicious of it. But I think we can be, fairly confident that this Norwich side is starting to find their true form.
Well, I think especially like you say when you mention the injuries we've had, and as we've mentioned before, like the team we're fielding versus the quality of squad that we have is completely different. And I think if you'd have knowing that we were going to go through this kind of rough patch, where we had to kind of really dive deep into the squad and not even be able to name the full amount of substitutes on the bench, to think that we're still top is crazy. Because if you'd have said to me we were going to be fifth, sixth, even like just outside the playoffs and seventh, I think to be fair, you'd be pretty chuffed with that. With knowing with the players that are coming back, and I look down the bench and the four subs we've made. Todd Cantwell, Seaperman, Kenny McLean, and Hugel, and you've still got players like Kieran Dowell on there who obviously didn't get to come on, and you've got also players coming back like Javi Quintiers and Tim Krul, etc. And I think it's nice at least that we've got through this patch. And look, it could still go wrong. I think the one thing which I'm never going to be prepared for is for us to have a fully fit, however much people we have in the squad, because we've quite a huge squad. But the fact that people are coming back now just gives me that extra confidence that we can change a game and bring someone on who can, as we're aware, the first, 6-7 games of the season, the only reason we really got going is because of substitutions. And we kind of had a period in time where we were either not making subs or didn't really have anyone to bring on as an impact player. So I think it's nice now we can kind of rely a bit more on those substitutes. I know we kind of chat about this when the game was going on, but even someone like a Kenny McLean, we've seen the impact he can make away at Brentford this year. And so bringing a player like that on, an international who's experienced, he's been at the club for a while, he knows tactically what he's doing. It's just a really good player to be able to introduce into the game when you need to win the midfield back.
I think there's no secret. This is why Norwich favoured the 5 subs. It benefits us greatly. Yeah, I think we've got one of, if not the strongest squad in the league, especially attacking an offensive threat that we have in those positions. And I think it's a really good point. You obviously mentioned the Todd and Kenny McLean substitution. I mean, granted, these two haven't quite found their form this season through injury or bad performances, but you bring on a Scottish international and a England under 21 international. And there's not many teams in this league that can do that and rely upon that type of quality. We know how good those two players can be on the day. I think the unfortunate thing is we haven't quite seen that, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They've had a troubled start to the season. Maybe less said about Todd Cantwell, the better. But
say that for later.
Yeah, we'll say that for later. But no, I completely agree. And Norwich are going to be certainly the beneficiaries of this 5 substitution rule. And I think all of a sudden you're in a game where you might just want to bring on one extra man in midfield, but you can just bring on that extra player. And it sounds so minute in a way and so, I suppose, irrelevant, but, just to be able to bring on 2 players in that midfield, the Blackburn midfield must be looking around and think, oh, brilliant. Like, you think you've dealt with it and all of a sudden, those type of energetic players come on. But yeah, no, I think the 5 subs rule is a really good thing for Norwich. And I think we'll see a lot more rewards for that in the future.
Well, I guess we kind of wanted to look more now at some individual performances and kind of look at how they played, and I guess credit them to potentially helping us come away with the victory. And the first person I didn't think would ever be on the list of honourable mentions, at least for the right reasons, was Michael McGovern. I was saying to you before we started again that the save, which has just been circulating around Norwich Twitter, of obviously his first half save from the header, which was early in the game as well, which I think is always a valid point as goal, because I always feel like that's maybe when they're a little bit less warmed up. I don't know. It might be complete rubbish, but I always find that those mistakes happen a bit earlier on with goalkeepers. But it was unbelievable. It was probably one of the best saves I've seen by a Norwich goalkeeper. By far,
for sure. For sure. Go on.
I didn't think the man had it in him. I really didn't. I didn't think he would be able to.
I think that me and you have given Michael McGovern his fair share of criticism, not really because of him as a player or why is this guy at Norwich. It's never been that. It's the fact that, in all honesty, I don't think he's at the level to be a backup goalkeeper. And we had the luxury of having Ralph Fireman on a bench. Certainly for the first half of last season, I think maybe we would have liked a little bit more quality there. But to be honest, if we're being truthfully, it's one of the hardest roles to actually recruit for in a side, because you're asking somebody to sit on the bench and probably play, maybe a couple of cup games, or if the keeper gets injured, but as a player you're probably just going to be sat on the bench the majority of the season. So unless you're going to recruit the right type of player and the right type of, I suppose, influence and person to the side, you don't just want to recruit anybody. And I think it's easy to say, we should have got another goalkeeper, because, well, actually, if nobody suitable is out there, then what can you do? You can't just make a new player. I think you're right with McGovern. It was one of the best saves certainly we've seen this season from a Norwich goalkeeper, and I think he made six saves with 4 of those coming from inside the box. So it shows the reflexes the guy has. And maybe that hasn't ever been a question mark about McGovern. He's a small goalkeeper. He's quite nimble, but it has just been his distribution and his dominance of the box and, his presence. And I think there's some sort of weird, is it something like he's only 1 inch smaller than Krul, which I just refuse to believe. That just can't be true. McGovern's definitely slipped the guy who's measured him like an extra £100 or something, just give him a couple of 4 inches. But, no, it was a really impressive performance by McGovern. By far his best performance in the Norwich City shirt today. And I think you have to give him, the benefit of the doubt in the sense. Maybe us as Norwich fans just didn't do that. This guy hasn't played for so long, and it just does take a little bit of time to get back into it. It took Tim Krul 6 months, didn't it, to find his form in the first championship season that we won. I think, does this almost just make you more I suppose happy and to let Krul come back slowly? I don't think, is there an immediate rush to bring him back and risk the injury and risk aggravating that? Because for me, I don't think the risk of bringing him back is worth it. I think you give him that extra game of just make sure he's 100%, because if McGovern's playing like that, and I don't think he will every week, but I don't think there's a need to at this moment. If we were third and we'd lost a little bit of form, right, get him back in. Let's rush these players back. But for me, I want Tim Krul to be back for this sort of hectic schedule and for the rest of the season. I don't want to risk pushing him too far, especially when the fact he's going to be going on international duty in March. I know it's a little bit of time away, but you don't want him to be risking him at his age. I just think, let's give McGovern another game. He deserves it, doesn't he? And I think it's not something I thought I'd say, but I don't think the risk is worth the reward, in all honesty.
I think there's so many factors to think about. I definitely agree that it's definitely made the decision a lot harder, because I still think, or I'd like to think, that he would not be in a position to be signed off ready to play unless he was fully fit. Tim Krul, obviously. And I do still think that, as fantastic of a shot stopper as he's obviously shown he is, that 48% pass accuracy and 10 out of 31 successful long balls, still the little things like that can make such a big difference, when Tim Krul can come in and get 60-70% on a good game. And it really depends on the opposition for me. I know we're going to speak about it later on, with obviously the big game we've got coming up next. I don't think I'd be disappointed if Michael McGovern started. In fact, I think Michael McGovern deserves to start, in all honesty, because of how well.
I think this is what I mean though. We're still, I get those sort of little nuances within Michael McGovern's game that aren't quite there. And look, there's no one who's slated it more than me, so I know all too well about that. But we're still winning games. I don't what I'm trying to say is we're still top. I think our lead might even be even. I don't know about this, but it might even be even more generous now since Tim Krul's come out the side. Now, I'm not saying that's because Tim Krul's injured.
Slow down.
Right, he's steady on. Steady on. Yeah. Coming out
that's the title sorted.
Yeah. We've been better since Tim Krul's been injured. No, we absolutely haven't been better since Tim Krul's injured. I'm just saying, I think for example, I don't think I'd risk him for Reading. Whereas if we're coming back off a draw, maybe a little bit of a bad performance, I might be more inclined to say, yeah, let's get him back. We need to sort of get into this rhythm, but I just don't think it's worth it. Tim Krul starts, he's maybe 90% fit, gets that little niggle, that little muscle injury. Just give him a week off, another week to just prepare. Even if he's on the bench and, worst comes to worst, you have to bring him on for an injury. I just think there's not an immediate need. Even if we draw against Reading, I think we're still going to be top. So, we will be.
I guess that I guess we can kind of finish off that discussion where we talk about like predicted XIs later on for Reading. But I guess to kind of move on to another one of the more, I guess what I'd say, vets of the squad.
Yeah.
We had a lot of appearance goals this week, but it was Alex Tete, 250 appearances, which is insane. I think in the modern day age of football, it's rare to see anyone go above bloody 50. So to see someone like that, obviously that I'm sure that figure would have been much, much higher if he wouldn't have had a couple of injuries and, along that way. But he's definitely been what I'd classify as a fantastic servant, as we're kind of already aware. And the fact that he can still step in.
Can I just say, I love Teddy, and I completely agree. He has been a fantastic servant, but why we're calling him a legend, I don't know. Like a legend, surely
interesting, legend, but
because I just think that word is brandished about so easily now. Like, I love Alex Tate. He's been a brilliant servant. He's done so many good things for us, but a legend, like, come on. I don't know. Go watch. There's so many other teams that Jeremy Goss, a legend, that iconic moment, but come on, I don't know.
I think he falls under that category of a lot of the players did under kind of Paul Lambert and come through that era, like Russell Martins, for example, where for a good, as much as people don't want to admit it, for a good 3 or 4 years, everyone was going, when are you going to sign a replacement? Come on, when are we going to sign a replacement? And because they're here and they're signing that deal, they're then given that legend status because they're here. But it's, I think let's be real. If Tete wasn't at maybe we're sidetracking too much. Maybe we're looking into it too much. But I definitely think the Alex Tete legend discussion is an interesting one. But nonetheless, I guess looking at his performance against Blackburn, it was fantastic, wasn't it? I mean, it was. I'd never say faultless from any kind of midfielder, but it was reassuring. Is kind of how I'd maybe describe it. How would you kind of look at his performance overall?
I think the biggest positive to Alex Tete starting is the freedom he provides Ollie Skip. The autonomy he then has, Skip, to break through and sort of showcase that ball progression ability that he has. I think it provides us with a different dimension, and Ollie Skip is so good at doing either of those roles. You can sit and he protect that back four, but if you want him to contribute a little bit further forward, he's more than capable. And I think that's also a really nice thing to have. I think how many times maybe, in previous seasons when Tribal has been that defensive midfielder and you've brought on Tete and you think, okay, Tribal, you're the one who can, play a few more passes and get forward a little bit more. And Tribal could never do that, but Ollie Skipper's doing that at ease. And look, this is a Alex Tete individual mention, so let's try and keep it at that. I think he had 3 successful duels, 3 interceptions, 2 key passes, and obviously that really good assist for Pookie. And absolute rock in the middle of the park. Once again, a player who I thought we might just see sparingly. I spoke about him on that podcast, didn't I, when we said, coming on for those last 5 minutes just to shore up games. I thought that was going to be Alex Tete's season, and that was the role he'd provide. And I never really thought he'd come in and play 90 minutes at the rate he has, or, full games. And like I say, a brilliant player, and somebody who just, you always, whenever you doubt Tete, and we go into every single season, probably for the last 5 campaigns, going, he's done now. And I've done it, you've done it, we've all done it. And I tell you what, next summer we'll be saying it again. And I think it's time to give that man another contract. I think only he knows how well he could cope with another season. But if we give him a contract, and even if he plays 5 games, for me that's worth it. He's just such a big influence on the team. He's an experienced player. We don't have too many of them sort of nowadays with Closer gone as well. I think he's invaluable to Norwich City. I really do.
Well, I was going to mention the fact that obviously from January, teams are liable to come in and discuss potentially taking him at the end of the season. So if Norwich were to, not to say that Tete would go and just take one anyway, but, you'd like to think that potentially discussions have been in place. Would you... I think that the one thing which is notable about Alex Tete and Tim Closer that you mentioned as well, and not to kind of sidetrack too much, but they're players that typically, I imagine, have probably had to take pay cuts in recent years. So, obviously it'd be interesting to see if, obviously we don't know the finance behind it or anything, but I'm sure there is still a kind of top figure that Norwich would be willing to kind of pay to keep him here, because he'd be very similar to like a Michael McGovern in the way that he's very much a role player. You know, he's not necessarily he could play 0 games and you wouldn't really feel like you're losing out from that. He's just an additional piece that's there really for like the kind of the changing room, the atmosphere at the club. You know, you think when a new signing comes in, what better kind of player have you got than an Alex Tete or Michael McGovern? You know, because they know the club inside out since, pretty much for the last decade, if you're Alex Tete. But I'm definitely with you. I think for all the critique you can give, I don't think there's a player there that I'd be happier to see sign another year deal with us in Alex Tete. And he's just displayed again that, even when you call upon him, he's a very consistent player still at what he does. It's still such a high level, It's not for every player to be able to crack it at this level for so long, let alone the step up to the Premier League when we were relying on him last year. So I guess to kind of not talk too much about him in kind of like a contractual point of view, I just want to say again, the assist, he loves an assist to Timu Pukki, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he absolutely loves it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will admit, Pukki did most of the work.
As he does usually, yeah.
But when Todd Cantwell can get an assist for that with Buendia earlier on in the week, I think, let's be real, it was a pretty good assist, but if that merits anything.
Yeah.
I guess to look at the man that received the pass in Timu Pukki, and obviously bagged the brace today, which is just typical fashion, scored his 50th goal in 100 games, which is an unbelievable ratio when you think about it. What a fantastic player he's been this year, and what a key piece we're missing for those couple of weeks or couple of games when we didn't have it. I think it really highlights now against a quality opposition exactly what we missed in not having him in the team with Stephen up front. But how do you think Timu Pukki did?
Oh, outstanding! He's such a unique striker in the sense that he's so good at coming deep and linking play and bringing the midfield into the game, but he's also as big of a threat in behind. And for me, there's been a lot of discussion around Pukki, and I think me and you both have been in agreement that we don't think we're going to see him at those same levels. And that doesn't then necessarily mean that Timu Pukki can't be a really valuable, maybe even one of our most important players this season. That if he gets anywhere near that mark at this campaign, I think we'll storm the league. I think he is a truly remarkable footballer. The worry about Pukki for me has always been when you're not seeing those runs in behind, when you're not seeing that I suppose energy and that clinicality in front of goal. He's been quite profligate in front of goal and been quite wasteful, and I think maybe that might be due to sort of the physical and the mental drain that he's been under for so long now. And he just seems to be as good as he's ever been. And this kind of feels like a nod to the old guard in a way, with McGovern, Tete and Pukki, all players in their 30s. But I mean, how do we even go about trying to replace this man? I've been watching Norwich since 2005, since about sort of 6 or 7, and for me, he's the best centre forward I've ever seen play for this club. Just his game, all round game yesterday was just remarkable. And just when you think he's done it all, he then makes this he done this run, track back from a counter attack, gets the yellow card, lovely tactical foul, which we all love. And it's just those little moments in games that he just does so well. And he is, if Alex Tate is invaluable, then I don't even know what sort of adjective you applied to Pukki, because he's a sensational footballer, and like I say, for me, the best centre forward I've ever seen play for this club.
Well, I think what's incredible is that defenders haven't worked him out by now. He's been doing this to Championship defenders for what feels like so long, and no one's managed to really figure out how to nullify him, which completely amuses me. And I mean, I'm not complaining. I think what I will say is I think this year he scored 9 goals in 16 games, which is a fantastic record, a truly fantastic record for a striker. And what you've also got to remember is that you had 3 or 4 games in there where I think he got like 1 goal against Preston, and that was it. And that was when we had Javi Quintero in. And I guess that was the kind of point I was going to say, is that in a weird way, I really feel like Sorensen or I guess a left back that isn't so direct to kind of getting down the line and crossing the ball in, has just changed the outlook on Timo Pukki and Norwich this season.
What?
I am a little bit nervous when Quintia does come back, and then inevitably we get another left back. But hopefully we can kind of not keep and retain playing the same way, but not necessarily go back to how we played the first couple of games of the season where we saw us struggle and kind of start off with, what was it, like a draw and a couple of losses. So, or one win, one draw and a couple of losses, I think, at that point before Quintia got injured almost. But sorry, I didn't know what you were going to say there.
No, yeah, it's a really interesting point actually about how Norwich's, I suppose, attacking game has changed, from the absence of Quintia. And yeah, I don't know if it's been I suppose, a conscious effort and conscious aim to reduce the amount of crosses that we're putting in the box, because it was absurd. It was, well, quite frankly, bizarre, to be honest, because we're not suited to that way. By all means, we need to be more versatile in how we carve out chances, but trying to launch the ball into the box to Timo Pukki is not going to work. And Sorensen has obviously that ability playing on the left as a right-footed player to cut in, and I think it's probably fair time to mention that goal obviously during the week as well. And yeah, I mean, Sorensen has been brilliant in the last week or so and has really grown into that role. And you're probably right. I think he does benefit. I think Pukki does benefit from Sorensen because, like I say, Sorensen comes into the game more. He comes into the middle of the park and it's easier to link up and stuff. I think we'd all still probably rather a natural left footer out there. But yeah, I think we hopefully when that time does come that we're not as reliant on crossing, because look at Max Aarons, he doesn't necessarily launch the ball into the box. He's very good at coming into the sort of those half spaces in those inside channels and taking on the defender and carrying the ball that way. I think that's probably what we need to see a little bit more on the left whenever we do get a new left back.
Well, can I just say how that one of the quotes of the week, not that that's something that we're necessarily going to add, but was, what was it? I don't know the exact quote, but Daniel Farke said to Sorensen, he said it in his presser before the game.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
You're what was it? It was to do with Alex Tete, and I loved the response from Sorensen where he was like, I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Yeah. And I think that sums up Alex Tete in a nutshell at Norwich City. But I think what I love to see is the fact that clearly the morale is really good, and I think that's nice because. And look, it might change in January time. I think we've all got to be pretty open to the fact that we're going back into what's going to be a really, really stressful month for a Norwich fan of counting down the days where players are staying here. But, all I can hope is that we can kind of continue this form and then you can, I guess, reason a bit more with players like your Max Aarons, your Todd Campbells and those kind of players like your Buendias that, hey, look, we're building something again here, be part of it. And, I have no doubt in the way that in the sample that I've seen of us play, if we can play with 14 first-team injuries and still finish top of the league, there is absolutely no way that we can't go on and get automatic promotion or win the league if we retain or even get stronger in January. So I just hope we can kind of push this form through to the new year, because it's going to be a really tough period, especially when you're talking about like 3 or 4 games in that week period around Christmas. We all know notoriously in football that is really make or break for some teams, and if that's where we hopefully might start to stretch that gap from 4 points up top to however much it might be.
Yeah, no, I think the transfer window is going to be an interesting time for Norwich, because I think as a fan you're always thinking, right, how can we improve? But look, Norwich have some really talented players on their books, and they'll all be interested in Emmy and Max in particular, 2 players who have been so pivotal to, I suppose, football and the rise from the Championship, winning the league, even in the Premier League, they were standout performers. And this year, they've been 2 of our better players this season. I think those 2 are indispensable, and if we lose them, it will be a massive blow. I think going into a window with these 2 being so highly rated as they are, it's probably the least worried I've been about losing them. Not because I don't think there's a possibility we could lose them, but because I think now, like, look, it'll be a massive blow if we lose them to our chances of winning the league and getting promoted and stuff. But I do think maybe there's more options and more players to fill in those boots. Can anybody ever fill the boots of an Emi Buendia? I don't think so. I think Norwich to sign a player like that and to find a talent, it's so rare, and it's, you know, an absolute gem of a find from Weber. But look, we do now, for the first time in a couple of years, have a few options at right back. We have a few of those attacking options, and look, if the worst happens and we lose them, I don't think it, you know, ruins our chances of getting promoted. If Brentford lose Ivan Toney, you know, how likely are they to get promoted and push on? And probably said that about a few of the other teams in and around us. But for me, I think maybe it's the first time in a while that Max Aarons and Emi Buendia won't be here forever, and maybe there is a little bit of a succession plan and starting to thinking about that eventuality. Hopefully it doesn't come in January, because for me, like, yeah, if they used to stay and we carry on this form and maybe an odd addition here and there, I think it's our league to lose, isn't it?
Well, I think I remember a couple of weeks ago, Weber talking, Farke talking in the presser about the fact that the club were looking to strengthen in a couple of areas, which I think was quite nice, because I think, like I say, if this has taught us anything, it's that the depth on the second half of the season is going to be absolutely imperative to our kind of success in the end, and, you know, almost detrimental to a degree of kind of the outcome at the end of the season. I do think the only perk to January, to the summer window, is that value-wise, you know, it goes up exponentially. You know, a Max Aarons might have cost you 20 million in the start of the season, but we could probably demand 35, 40, and there might be some maniac out there that throws up the cash for it. So, and as much as I love the man, you know, I think anyone would kind of, you know, take him there for 40 million. And it kind of goes for Buendia and Cantwell as well. I guess from like a personal standpoint, you know, we've won games without Buendia. We've won games without Pukki. We've won games without Cantwell. Not to say that I want them gone for the whole season, but I guess, like you said, we've developed a kind of a tactical appreciation where I feel like whoever's in that position will give us a level of output which is good enough to win a game. It's just those extra players give us, I guess, more moments. You know, like a Buendia is going to give us more than what a Josh Martin will, but Josh Martin's still going to be a fantastic player to have on that side at the championship level. But I'm not really nervous for it. I'm just intrigued to see what happens, because, you know, being top of the league and having the quality we have, and you know, the players kind of being in rhythm, there is gonna be Premier League and European sides that come calling for the players, and, you know, we've just got to be prepared for it. And I hope they stay, but, you know, worst case is we're going to earn a probably double what we would have earned in the summer transfer window when we just got relegated. You know, so I think we're already kind of, I know you can't really look at football as a money side, but really it is, isn't it, at the end of the day?
I think, you know, Norwich fans will have their own sort of personal valuations of Emi Buendia and Max Aarons and how valuable they are, and, you know, the price tag that should be attached to them. I think the reality is, if a serious inquiry is made about 25 million plus, then unfortunately, I think in the position Norwich are, I'm not saying they accept a 25 million pound bid, but I'm saying it probably starts to get a little bit serious, and Norwich's ears are probably pricking up and going, okay, you know, this isn't somebody just messing around like Jamal Lewis at Liverpool. This, you know, I think sometimes Norwich fans underestimate how much of a large amount of money that is, and how beneficial. Like 25 million is what, you know, it's probably, I don't know, is it probably about half of what we earn all year? In terms of revenue, and you can probably take some off that, obviously, with COVID. And I think in the Premier League, our revenue was about 100 million or something. So, you know, this is a large amount of money, and I think it when those types of figures that are being chucked about when you're a championship club, it's hard to resist the temptation to engage those kind of offers. But look, I want Max Aarons and Emi Buendia to stay, because I think you're right. I think if we get into the Premier League, I think their values go up even more, and hopefully, you know, we can keep hold of them in January. Maybe even, you know, a bit of a sidetrack, and maybe even, okay, yeah, Max Aarons is sold, but he's loaned back to us, because I don't think Max Aarons walks into a top sort of 8 Premier League club at the moment. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, similar to Godfrey, though, we might be a little bit too far above him for if he wants to get loaned back. Touchy subject. Well, I guess what we were going to go on to, I guess, what we'll kind of call the general consensus. But I think, to be fair, I think we've kind of probably talked about that, really, haven't we? Kind of in how we've been this week, and our feelings around kind of going forward. We've got a couple of, I guess, individual moments which we kind of wanted to highlight. I don't know if you want to take care of the first one in Todd's dive.
Yeah. The idea, I suppose, we're here is just like those little moments in games that probably don't usually warrant, you know, discussion in podcasts, but that me and you just sort of like kind of like talking about. It's kind of selfish. in I suppose inclusion. But yeah, the Todd Cantwell dive was an interesting scenario and situation that played out, and I can't quite work out how I feel about it. I think with all those moments, whenever something happens to Todd Cantwell, like I just think he's stereotyped, and maybe that's through his own fault, and nobody else has done that, but he kind of got like poked in the eye and then just sort of fell to the floor and fell to his knees, and it's one of those moments that if it happens to Pookie, I don't think we're having this discussion, but I think only Todd knows if that was enough to make him go down. I think the one thing I would say to people being so, just batting it off as Todd being a, knobhead, basically. I think let me poke you in the eye and see how much you like it, because it does hurt.
Whilst you're running as well.
Yeah, that's the thing I'd say. Whether it requires the theatrical dive and falls to the ground, I don't know, but maybe that raises a bigger sort of question as to this whole discussion around if you don't go to the ground, you don't get penalties and you don't get free kicks and stuff. So I don't know if you maybe want to talk about Jordan Hugill, because I know you're a big fan of him and in the introduction he made, because we have different opinions maybe on Hugill, but I think that's probably him playing that role, coming off the bench and just holding up the ball and doing that. He's so good at that, isn't he?
Put this way, Hugill's never going to really make a difference when he comes on in the 89th, 90th minute of any game. I don't think any striker is really kind of looking forward necessarily to that. But I guess to kind of not revert too much back, but I definitely see Hugill, especially this season, literally playing the identical or almost to a Jordan Rhodes, but the tail end of the season, Jordan Rhodes. Not the Jordan Rhodes that started out and scored 6-7 goals and won us a couple of games. I guess you could kind of say that when he's won us games, like for example the penalty at Rotherham. I know it's a penalty there, but still he was the man to kind of step forward, and I'm sure we'll hopefully have some more games across the season where he does have an impact and score the odd goal. I'm sure he will. But he fits that mold of that backup striker. From what I can see, he appears to be such a selfless man. I think that is going to really fit with the squad a lot. I think the man was probably celebrating more than most players that have been on the pitch for 90 minutes that, we'd won that game. And I think that was a really nice bit to see. He just brings a different element late on, as a defender briefly, even at youth football, the last thing you want is, some big 6'5" defender striker backing into you. It's just, maybe it's because I'm 5'7", but I guess for anyone else, it's an easy way to frustrate opposition, close out, and just take any kind of momentum out of the game. And having someone like that to bring on, don't get me wrong, Omatoyo, I'd love it if we could bring on a youngster every week, but I think you've got to be realistic, and I think you've got to, like Farker said, you've got to give these boys a little bit of time, because they really probably aren't ready. But they've only been with us for the first a couple of weeks, and who knows? It might be a case of 1 week is Hugill, 1 week is Omatoyo, but I'm more than comfortable having Jordan Hugill come into the team. I think he's more than at this level. And I know we'll talk about it, but one day he'll get a brace, and for one podcast I'll be able to kind of shove it back in Bill's face. But I'm happy with his little cameo. I'm just glad to see the man back fit. And I know one day he's gonna prove us wrong, prove you wrong. I guess
I hope he does. I hope he does.
To look ahead of what's next, it's going to be a very, very exciting game. We've got Reading coming up, who are 5th right now. But of course, I mean, they started without a loss for the first 7 games or something. I mean, they were absolutely running away with it, and I think they lost about 5 in a row, and that's the only reason why they're kind of found where they are. And we like a lot of people are saying, especially in the kind of media, they're falling off. But one loss in the last 5 is not exactly form of the team that's dropping off. Some of their performances have been, I guess, a bit more questionable, but I think they're starting to kind of turn that around now and really kind of gain that momentum again that they started the season with. And they're almost a bit more of an unknown entity. I remember when we went away to Reading the year we went up, and I mean, that looked like a club in turmoil. I mean, they could barely fill the stadium, and I mean, I say that there's probably more, 2,000 fans. There's probably more there, post COVID than there was before, to be honest. And I never really foreseed them being the club they are now today. But credit to them, a lot of their players haven't changed, but they seem like a really tough outfit. And you've got to think, if we can get through a Blackburn Reading tail ender, you're not going to get many more tougher weeks in the Championship. I don't know how you feel about that, but this is probably our toughest back-to-back games we've faced so far.
Yeah, I feel a little bit more confident. Wait, let me rephrase it. I feel a little bit more at ease going into this game than I did the Blackburn game. I think, it almost seems like their position should change. But you're right. Reading had a really good start to the season and tailed off a little bit. But, it does look like they're finding a little bit of form, even if that is just through results more than performances. But, it'll be a tough game. These are the type of games that you got winning the Championship, and I completely agree. If you come through with another 3 points, you're then betting on, or you're then putting that question to your Swanseas, your Watfords, your Bournemouth, those teams in and around us. You Reading then can't progress because you're beating them, and all of a sudden that gap just starts to stretch, and that's Norwich's task, and it's a tough one, and maybe it's a little bit more of an ideal as opposed to an expectation or a reality that could occur. Because I think if we start stretching that gap, then it does start to become a little bit laughable how we've managed to do that with all the injuries and all the nonsense going on around the club and stuff. So, look, if we can get another 3 points, it's massive, and just carry on this form.
I think they remind me a lot of Blackburn in the essence that they have a very strong squad on paper. I look at some players here like Lucas Zhao. I say on paper, I remember coming up against him when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, and a couple of seasons ago before he moved to Reading, and he was a good striker, but not like, I mean, he scored 11 goals in 16 games. So he's effectively outperforming Pookie this year. But I look at the youngster that come through the ranks of Liverpool and Ovie Ejaria, fantastic player. Yaku Miete, who's been on fire for them again this year, and they've got a lot of people that, like I say, remind me of kind of like the Norwich Farker, year we went up, and I guess that kind of that not under preparing or kind of saying it's only Reading. It's that kind of, I feel like the only thing that makes me a bit nervous is how people can look at Reading and go, oh, we'll actually breeze through these, and I don't think it will be as kind of as simple as that. They have a lot of quality. The only thing that I will say is that from the looks of it, if you go 1-0 up against this Reading side, they're not particularly strong enough to kind of come back. I look at Norwich, and Norwich could go 2-0 down. You'd probably still put money on them to come back to 2-2, 3-2 up. And, Reading are more likely to lose that lead. We saw when they played another quality team in Brentford when they went 2-0 up and then lost like 5-2, 4-2, something like that. So, I think a lot of the time we've seen them kind of regain their form has been against teams that have been down at the bottom, and in QPR, for example, recently. But it's going to be interesting to see how they match up against, theoretically, the best team in the division, and I guess we've kind of got that label on our heads now. So, I'm excited for it because I like seeing a team that might, like you say, with Blackburn, come out at us, and I think that will really play into our favour. However, because of that, we've got to be careful. There is that adverse effect that they could come out at us and, blow us out of the water, and they do have the quality to do that. So I think it'll be a good watch. I believe it's on Sky, isn't it, this week?
Not sure, to be honest.
I think it might be main event, and rightly so. But are you confident going into it? Like, not to get a score prediction, but like, are you confident, or are you a little bit more like?
Yeah, I'm always confident.
Think we're gonna win?
Especially at the moment. I think it's so refreshing as an Norwich fan going into each and every game with that air of confidence, and you have to remind, maybe against Blackburn when Elliott scored, you have to just remind yourselves of the position Norwich are in, and that, we're not mid-table and we're not, outside the playoffs. We are top of the league by some distance now. So yeah, full of confidence going into this game. Hopefully we can avoid any more further knocks. That's always my main worry going into other games. Obviously we won't know until Monday's press conference, or is it Monday or Tuesday? I can't remember. The press conference.
Tuesday. I think it might be a Wednesday game. I really can't remember.
So whenever, that's always a worrying sort of 30 minutes when Farkas having his press conference because you're just waiting for an Emmy Wendy to be out for it or something. But touch wood, jinx that now. But yeah, always confident Alfie, and another 3 points would be marvellous.
Wonderful. Well, I think that is probably a good point to kind of end things off. Now, again, like I say, we are back now for the foreseeable future, if I can say it. After that little kind of week off, but in terms of if you're a viewer on YouTube, because we are back on YouTube now, we'd have really appreciate it if you could give it a like or subscribe to the channel if you want to see our podcast and little kind of mini videos that we'll do every now and then to kind of look at how Norwich are doing. And in terms of if you're someone who is listening, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, would really appreciate it on Spotify if you could download the podcast just so we can see that you've actually viewed it. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you could leave us a lovely 5-star review, that'd be fantastic. But until the next time, I've been Alfie and Billy. I don't know if I want to say goodbye, but if not, we'll see you next time.
See you later.